Panther fans, get ready for a deep dive on All-22 because
the film don't lie.
Oh, Mike Rucker back in the house with Kevin Donnalley and I. Yeah, man.
Oh, yeah. Good to be back.
Good to have you back,
Good.
my man.
Good.
A little warmer this way.
Got closer to nature. We understand. We're not going to give out all your business, but glad to see you back. Glad Mother Nature let you survive. Get out of there, man. I tell you, better you than me.
I know. It was cold.
Well, speaking of Mother Nature, we got to talk about the elephant in the room. And, guys, this big week, big news this week was the trade of Kelvin Benjamin. And the bottom line is, whether you agree with it or some people's feelings were hurt, what have you, the bottom line is there is a football game to be played. And on this show, we talk about what goes on in the field. Mm-hmm. But in this case, what happened off the field is going to affect what goes on the field. As you guys look forward to Sunday's game against the Atlanta Falcons, big NFC South game, who needs to step up?
Well, that is some production you're going to have to replace with Kelvin Benjamin being gone now. So that's reps, that's balls that are going to be thrown the way of some different guys that need to step up. I think the obvious answers, are the guys that are on this roster that are speedier guys, like a Russell Shepard or Curtis Samuel. Those two guys need to be targeted more, use that speed, and get out there and get those guys open. I think, against the Bucs, we saw a little taste of that. A couple of routes that they ran with Russell Shepard. He had a nice route where it was a 3rd and long situation. He's right near the right defensive end over there. He bangs that guy for just a second, then releases right over the middle and really gives Cam a nice target running right in front of his face with a lot of speed. And he shows that extra speed by getting to that first down marker. That defensive back was playing a little bit deep, and he just beat him right to that first down marker and was able to get the first down. Another one with Curtis Samuel, with him, did a really nice job of, he gets off the line of scrimmage, he's on the right side, he finds a little open zone there. So it's not really anything he did that was overly impressive, but it's about kind of reading the backer. The backer moved away from him a little bit. He settled down in a nice zone, again, right in the field of vision of Cam Newton. And so Cam's able to complete that easy throw right there. Turns out to be a big gain that's able to get the first down or close to it. And, those are some things that I think Cam throws those balls very accurately. He gets them to those guys where they can use their feet to go make extra yardage, that speed that they have. So I think those are two guys, Samuel and Shepard, that can step up and fill that role, filling the void that had been created by Kelvin Benjamin being traded.
Ruck, who you see?
Yeah, I think one of the plays that really stood out to me has to deal with McCaffrey, but I think it starts before that. And I think it starts with Mike Shula and the design of the play and the film work that they looked at of what the Bucs were going to give them. And, McCaffrey's in the backfield, and he had 2 receivers to the left. And normally as a defensive guy, and especially linebacker in the secondary, when someone leaves your zone or someone leaves you, you're taught to look at something coming back at you. And when you look at the way this play was designed, both receivers do an inside release. And when you look at the linebacker, it's man-to-man, so they're blitzing. The linebackers got McCaffrey, and you see the 2 receivers release inside, so the linebacker's eyes go to the flat. And that's a natural deal as a defensive linebacker. But McCaffrey does an angle route to where he looks like he's going outside, and he plants that foot and immediately comes back inside. And you look at the linebacker of the Bucs, and he is totally mystified because he's totally out of place. And McCaffrey makes a nice, easy catch and is able to just get right down the field really quick. And I think that is really by design from Mike Shula, and I thought that was a great play. And I guarantee that linebacker it was really, really upset with himself because he bit on the cheese.
Well, let me tell you about that linebacker, all right? That's Levante David, right? He's a 6-year veteran, I believe, out of a university that you're familiar with.
Yes.
We're talking about Nebraska Cornhuskers.
That's low-hanging fruit, man.
Carl, let's keep it moving.
Hey, 99% of the time, you're right on that one.
It's low-hanging. He went after you on that one. See what happens when you take a week off? Yeah. You guys talked about that. Okay, let's think about Kelvin Benjamin's last big play in a Panther uniform was that touchdown at 25-yard on 3rd down. and I'm right at the opposite goal line looking across the field. And I look at that play, and it wasn't even fair because that ball was up in the air, and the corner hanging behind Kelvin Benjamin looked like one of my kids when they were toddler, trying to get my attention. And he just completely walled him out and went up and stretched out and made that play. Who is going to make that play? First guy that will have to step up into that role is the obvious one, the other big guy that's remaining, and that's Devin Funchess. Now, there was a similar play in the game where Funchess does a sort of an out and up, goes up the field, and it's one of those 50-50 balls. The quarterback feels like he's got a matchup he's got to exploit. He puts it up in the air, and it's the receiver's job to go make a play. And on this 50-50 ball, Funchess did not. Couple things there. One, he gave up a lot of ground to the sideline, didn't restack over the DB, never got on top of the DB, and the ball's back inside, so he has to fight through the DB to get back inside. Now, when the Panthers get down in the red zone, like that play with Benjamin, and need that play, Devin Funchess has to step up. As we move on, one other thing, and I want you guys to comment on this. A lot of people talk about the receivers who have to step up. What about other positions like the offensive line? For instance, we know this team wants to get the big chunk play back into the game. I maintain that you can't do that unless you're running play action. That's when your big chunk plays come historically. That means what, Mike Rucker?
You got to be able to run the ball.
Okay.
The offensive line is going to have to be able to block to get that time, but you have to establish the run. And as a defense, there's nothing worse than when a team can run the ball on you. And when you have a big guy like Jonathan Stewart, that he needs to go downhill. He's not a guy that is going to beat you to the corner side to side, east and west. He's a north-south type guy. And so to establish everything that we've talked about in the last 24, 48 hours is, to me, goes back to Jonathan Stewart, and can you get him going north and south to where he's making contact at 3 yards plus, and then he's falling for another 2-3 yards. That, to me, is Panther football. When you go back to when this team is really rocking and rolling, it's because the run has been established, you have the play action, and you got the defense on their heels.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, you go back to the Bucs game on that 17-play drive, their second possession of the game, they kept running the ball, and there wasn't a lot of big runs, but you talk about big chunk plays. What it did do was set up the play action that Rucker's talking about, because it was a 3rd-and-1 situation. They stacked that line of scrimmage. They thought that run was coming. They did the play action to Jonathan Stewart, and, man, they motioned over Ed Dixon, and he slipped out scot-free, and it ended up being a huge chunk play, about 15 yards, but that's what they're kind of looking for. It's hard to get those 20s and 30s in a drive, but you want some plays that get you 10 to 15 yards at a time to make that drive keep going, get some momentum, and move them down. And Ed Dixon did it right there, and it was a beautiful call by Coach Shula.
All right, one last thing on this trade, and we'll move on because we got to talk about the Falcons. And I'd be remiss with two Panther legends, guys who I know for a fact led this team when you guys played. That's one of the things I always admired is the leadership that you showed. Anytime, and let's make it general in the workplace. Anytime in the workplace, things happen that you don't agree with. As an adult, what do? You have to keep working. You have to do your job. They say there's no I in team. I disagree. In team, there's an I, there's an O, and there's a U. I owe you. Mm-hmm. Because as part of a team, I owe you to be my best every day. I owe you to take everything that happens in my world, put it aside when I cross those white lines, and give Kevin Donnalley everything I need if I'm your teammate, correct?
That's correct. No, it really is a business that's you got to just focus on the next thing. And so they had some time to talk about the situation and understand it. It was on their off day. But when they get back to work on a Wednesday, that thing has to be put to bed. You go out there and you work and you totally focus on football, because the biggest thing coming now is those Falcons rolling into Bank of America Stadium.
Yeah, and the Falcons don't care. And really, they're smiling and saying, hey, you guys think about all that you want, but we're still coming up here, playing a game, Sunday at 1 o'clock. And so the Falcons, they don't care. And so you have to get it out your system and get moving forward. This is the nature of the game. Whether you're, downtown working in the corporate world, or you're on the football field, things are going to happen that you might not understand. The one thing you can't do is you can't get in your little groups and get in your little corners and get to talking and fussing, because the Falcons don't care about that. They're coming to try to steal a win. True words spoken by two guys who've been there. And I think you can take that to the bank. Okay, you brought up the Falcons, so let's get on them right away, because this Falcons offense, and I go specifically to the offense, has been a thorn in his team's side, especially last season. Okay, what do they have to do to cage that Birds offense?
I'll start this. All right, first, as much as we want to run the ball, as the Carolina Panthers, so do the Falcons. They love running the football. They want to set up some of those deep passes to Julio Jones through the running game. And so what that means is this Panthers defense is going to have to put the reins on Freeman and Tevin Coleman. Those two guys are absolutely critical to their run game. And I think we have the perfect antidote to that venom, because we got some big guys up front that can make those guys uncomfortable back there. And I'm talking about Star Lotulelei and K'Wan Short. Those two cats can really make a difference, because they like to really plant their feet going one direction, then cut back the other way, try and get cuts to the inside. A couple of plays that I saw in that Falcons win over the Jets that I think they did really well was one of the plays against the Jets. Freeman's going to that front side. It's a zone to the left, and he attempts to cut back. And what that zone blocking wants to do is really spread the lineman out, make one lineman think, oh, I'm getting reached. Let me get out here wider. This other guy doesn't want to get hooked. He's kind of slow playing it. Suddenly there's big gaps. Well, what happens is the Jets did a nice job of everybody not flying out of there, getting panicked on the zone like it's going to be run outside. Their defensive tackle slow plays it really nice. And when Freeman tries to cut that thing back, he is right there sitting and waiting. And I see Star Lotulelei doing that. That's the kind of player he is. And then Tevin Coleman was in on another play, kind of a similar play. They're running that zone play. He's looking for that cutback. So he looks first to the front side. He doesn't see any options there. All right, I'm going to cut back in the middle here. Man, they all had their gaps really nicely done. He's like, well, I got to go backside and try and bust it out the backside. Well, that Jets linebacker that's back there did a really nice job of not only kind of keeping contained, but pushing that tight end that was there, I think, or the tackle, into the backfield slightly, that just kind of reined in that cut. He had nowhere to go. That linebacker had his outside arm free, shut that thing down. I think we got those guys. I mean, when you look at our front, like Mario Peppers, those two big guys I talked about in the middle, if they can just stay like they've done with their run fits up to this point in the season, I think they got a great chance of shutting down that running game for the Falcons.
Hey, Ruck, I want to hear your points on defense, but Kevin, I looked at that whole film, and I think they come out the locker room, Freeman especially. Look, he comes out the locker room looking for a cutback, and I rarely saw him hit it front side. Ruck, what else do you see defensively that the Panthers can do?
As defense, you want to stop the run and you want to get after the pass. I think we're built for the run up front with penetration. Linebackers have the speed to run with that zone plays of the Falcons. But when it comes time, when it's 3rd and long and you need to get after Matty Ice, we have the guys to be able to do that. And one of those guys is number 90, Julius Peppers, a guy I played 6 years with. So proud of this guy, moving to number 4 all-time on the sack list, against the Bucs with 151 sacks. I'm just really proud of him, and he's leading this defense in the sack category. And when you have him, Mario, and Horton and CJ, I guarantee this Falcons offensive line knows what they're about to get into Sunday, and it's going to be 60 minutes, especially at home. So the crowd gets loud. That's a defensive line's best scenario is when the crowd is loud and you can get after that QB.
Yeah, and one more point on that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when I looked at the Jets, a lot of times their ends were a little undisciplined and getting too far upfield, and then they weren't getting the push like you would get from Star or you would get from K'Wan Short. And that just allowed a real even pocket to form. And if you leave him back there in a pocket where he just feels comfortable, it's going to be a long day.
It's going to be a long day. You have to disrupt this offense. And when you have a good quarterback like Matty Ice, you have to be in his space. You have to make him uncomfortable, because if he has that time, we know what he can do, him, Julio, and those receivers. It could be a long day for you.
Good deal. Well, fellas, good stuff. Always a pleasure. Ruck, glad to have you back. KD, always bringing it. Appreciate you. Fans, we are out of time, but remember, if it happens in between the lines, we'll talk about it right here on All-22, because
the film don't lie.
We'll see you next time.